This show is a proud member of the Nerdy Legion Podcast Network. Get more at nerdylegion.com. Enjoy the show.
This is Brightside Home Theater. Hey, home theater nerds, welcome to the Brightside Home Theater Podcast, the podcast that's all about the sights, the sounds, the scenes. And this week, the conversation. Great conversation with Tom, had a really good time. He's waiting in the green room. Yep, he's waiting. And you know how impatient he can get, so we got to get right to him. But thank you to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you to everybody following me on Twitter. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, go to patreon.com/brightside-home-theater. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, @brightside_chat. All the links are in the show notes. Really appreciate it. But, you know, that's not what this podcast is about. This is about having fun. And Tom and I had a great time. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So let's get right to that green room. Let's get into a conversation with Tom, and we're going to have some fun. Hey, Tom, how are we doing?
Yeah, we've been talking for like half an hour. What'd you
Exactly.
Don't try to dress it up for the crowd there, DJ. I'm dropping truth bombs over here. You're like, hey Tom, it's the first time we start talking yet. Yeah, right, DJ. Try to butter me up before we get on the podcast.
You've been holding on to that joke all day, haven't you? You knew you were going to do that.
That's off the dome piece, man. This is full frontal Tom. This is just how I roll. Just think of how I'm like at dinner with my kids when somebody looks over me and says something stupid. I'm just like, oh, and the rest of the kids look up from their dinner like, oh God, he's about to get it, and he is. He's about to get it, and he knows he's going to get it, and that's just the way it is. It's always a he because I have 3 boys, so you know, it's not.
There you go.
I'm treating my boys worse than my girls, though I would. Because they deserve it, because they're terrible. But anyhow.
My daughter's just like me. And it is...
That's the worst. That's the worst.
Oh, it's...
It's worse when you look at them, you're like, oh, God, I would have done that too.
Yep. But the funny thing is, you know this with kids. It's like, you know what's coming before they do. And I'm like, because you're just like, all right, here we go. And we go back and forth and we butt heads big time.
We got a call from a principal from one of my kids. The principal called me. I was like, "Which kid is it?" And they told me. I'm like, "Oh, that's not mine." Because there's one that's mine. They're all mine as far as I know. But there's one that's definitely mine. Like there's one that like you meet him and you meet me and you go, "Oh yeah, that's this kid." Like we're exactly the same. So, you know, it wasn't him that got in trouble. It was one of the other ones. So I was like, "Okay, well, this is his mom's fault." Whatever you're about to tell me, this has nothing to do with me.
I don't know why you're calling me.
I will punish as I am required to do as a parent. But and I will hold him accountable. But this is not my fault. Yeah, this is fine. Mr. Andry, you might want to take a seat. I'm like, there's literally. I mean, if the school is still standing, and even then, I'm not sitting down for this. You can't. I've been through a pandemic, lady. You're not. Nothing you're going to say right now is going to shock me. My threshold has gotten way too high.
Oh, yeah. We've all been pushed and pushed. So, and that's why we're here. We're here for entertainment, or the listeners are here for entertainment. Yeah, as we were saying in the conversation that we had, the listeners like the banter. And boy, did you just hit one out of the park by outing us and all the professionalism that we try to bring.
Should I put a little hash mark back here? 1 for Tom, 0 for DJ. I don't know. If I'm keeping score, that number next to your name is just going to keep ringing up. In case you're wondering.
Oh man,
it's going to stay 0.
Yeah, but actually, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is because I don't think there's too many people, but I mean, maybe there's a few out there that have never heard of AV Rant. And I wanted to talk about the listeners because I'm sure you haven't been paying attention to my podcast, but I've gone to twice a week now because of the listeners. And once a week I talk to just the listeners, and then I do a movie or an interview on Fridays. The listeners are amazing. And the reason I wanted to bring it up, and tie it into your show is completely entirely listener based.
Yes.
Which you didn't start out that way. How long did it take you to evolve to that? And, I know about your show, but tell the listeners how you got to that.
Right. So AV Rant started over, well, I don't know. I have to do the math. I guess it's, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, 16 years. I don't know. It's a long time.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's been a while. 2007, I think, was our first. In May of 2007, I think our first episode hit. So whatever that is.
So we are 14 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Math's not my strong suit. So we started off as just a news, kind of like that. Back then, there was a lot of people putting out new podcasts constantly. Everybody was trying to put out a podcast, and a lot of it was really super edgy. Read edgy as half drunk, mostly vulgar, and lots of offensive stuff out there. And I can't say that podcasts are all that much different these days. I wouldn't know. I don't listen to them. But we did something a little bit cleaner, and it was me and my co-host, who was Dina. And Dina was or is still the wife of a good friend of of mine and Clint's, who were the kind of the genesis of. Clint said, we need a podcast. Tom, you should do it. And he said, you should also talk to Dina because, Jay is a good friend of mine and Dina would be perfect. I'm like, okay, well, all right. I wanted to do one by myself because I figured whatever. So I did. So I said, okay, we're gonna test it out. We're gonna test out the podcast format. So we did an episode. I did an episode with all the same topics. I did one by myself. Okay. I did one with Clint, and then I did one with Dina. And the one with Dina was far superior to all the rest of them. But I mean, it wasn't even close. Yeah. And so Dina and I did the podcast together, and it was news, editorials, reviews. I talk about articles I'd written, come up with a couple of things. It was anywhere. We tried different formats where it was like 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, or an hour, or just 20 minutes period once a week. We kind of played around with it based on our schedules and everything else. And that went on for a while. Rob H, or we called him Grammar Rob back then, used to email in and tell me all the things I said that were incorrect, like whom versus who, or fewer versus less, less versus few, and all this other stuff. Used to correct me all the time. Very annoying boy. Still annoying, honestly. To be honest with you. Anyway, so he he used to write in, and then every once in a while I would have guest co-hosts, and Rob ended up becoming one that was a little. Clint would do it every once in a while. Then Rob, I think, started doing it every once in a while as well. Then Dina, I moved to Australia. Dina, I think even before I moved to Australia, Dina decided, no, it was in Australia. Dina decided she was done with the podcast. She had, it was taking up too much of her time, and she wanted to move on from that responsibility. So I got a new podcast host who was a listener, Will. He asked his wife if she, or I think it was girlfriend at the time. I don't remember. Anyways, Liz started doing the podcast with me, and she was great as well. And then Liz needed to move on as well, and Rob came in. And when Rob came in, he was strongly motivated to answer listener questions, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. It's too hard. It's too specific. It pigeonholes us too much. I would rather have a podcast that had a broader appeal. So news, reviews, all this other stuff. We could,
right.
I'd rather do that, and it's easier to do that. I have an opinion about something. You have an opinion about something, and then we talk about it and we discuss it, and then we move on to the next thing. That's like 20 minutes of prep every week, and then you just do the podcast. And after having done it as long as we had, or I had in particular, that was no problem. But Rob's like, no, I really want to answer listener questions. I'm like, I don't want. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I don't want to do that. He goes, don't worry, I'll do it. I'm like, all right. I mean, I went from having like 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour of prep a week, getting topic lists together and stuff like that,
right,
to Rob doing everything because he wanted to do it. Yeah. This is the podcast he wanted to listen to. He wanted to listen to a Q&A podcast where it was very specific questions going in depth about the listener questions. So what ends up happening is you don't have a question. Most people don't know how to ask the question that they have. So what they do is they listen to our podcast and they hear other people ask questions and go, I have that problem, But I didn't recognize it was a problem. I didn't know that
Right.
I thought that was just the way, I thought that was the way things were. I thought things were supposed to be kind of blue on my OLED. They just thought that was the way it was.
Right.
OLEDs are blue. So they hear the question getting answered and they go back to their system and then they fix things based on that. And then they come up with their own questions and they come in. So it's a long podcast. It's like 2 hours a week in one sitting. If Rob had his druthers, it would be, we'd answer every single question, which usually would push into 3 hours, 3+ hours a week in one sitting, which I just physically cannot do. I could barely do the 2 hours as it is. It's just, it takes up a lot of my day, and the time that he has to record versus and when I have to adjust my schedule for it, it's just really hard. So that's our podcast, and we answer. So people say everything from what speaker should I buy to, I have an open plan basement and I can do anything I want, and this is what I thought, and this is my budget. What do you guys suggest? So it goes all over the place. And we just help people with their AV questions. And sometimes people just ask, hey, I don't get what the deal is between, OLEDs versus LEDs versus this other stuff. What is all this crap? Or, I don't, I don't understand how Rumiko Wizard works, or why do people keep talking about towing in your subwoofers? I'm like, I don't know who said that, but they definitely you can ask my wife. She'll hear, because not every day, but every once in a while, I'll go to Reddit, the home theater subforum on Reddit, and start reading because it gives me an idea of what kind of questions people are asking, and then I see the answers, and sometimes people give good answers, but most of the times the questions are like, oh my God, don't touch anything because you're going to break it. You're going to break everything.
Right.
You are not qualified to do this. Like one guy bought 2 receivers for the same room. I'm like, but why? He goes, well, I wanted speakers in the front and the back. I'm like, oh God. Okay, so we're gonna have to bring this all the way back to like this is what a speaker is, because you clearly are a little confused here. But and then I'll just go through, and my wife, she'll like, what are you gasping at over there? Like, oh, I just read an answer, and boy, can't believe it.
It's amazing. It's entertaining. It really is, but I do avoid it. I try not to read that stuff because I've dealt with it firsthand.
I know the answers.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing this for as long as I've been doing that. I know many of the answers, not all of them. I mean, I'm not, and Rob too. Rob also, he does a lot of work in order to. He sounds very, very smart, and he is very, very smart. But he sounds very, very smart on our podcast. He does a ton of work so that he is totally prepared for every answer on that podcast. And I do none of that. I just, everything I do is literally what I'm doing right now is just off the dome piece.
Right.
And and that just comes from years of doing, but I know these answers, but if there's too many people giving the wrong answer and they're all kind of chiming in, I'm like, you know what? Sorry, buddy, you're on your own. I don't want to get in that internet fight because it's just too much toxicity out there, which is unfortunate. Right. I shouldn't not do that, but I just walk away, which is unfortunate, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, the podcast, listening to you guys, I came in very late. I came in late to podcasting in general. I was listening to sports radio, and I had enough with that, and I went over to podcasting, and of course, the first thing I thought of is I'm like, hey, maybe they have something for home theater, and it was you guys and Scott Wilkinson, and they went away, and you guys were just like, I listen to you. I'm 2 hour plus every week because I listen to you guys, and I listen to you again. As a matter of fact, now I've been listening to you for a long enough time now. It's 5 years, something like that. And we got in the car, and your podcast happened to be on. And of course, my car, it links to my phone right away. And my wife's like, who was that? And it was your voice. And I go, and I just laughed. And I changed it for her because she, if you're not a home theater person, you'll fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I was like, she goes, who was that? I go, oh, that's Tom. And I said, she goes, why did you laugh? I said, because listening to you guys reminds me, even like one of the things I liked about podcasting is I could travel anywhere in the world, have my phone, put my earpiece in, and still hear familiar stuff. So I was down at my buddy's in Texas, and I was out for my drive in the morning, and I listened to you guys like I did every Friday. I was like, oh, I can't wait to put them on. And I'm driving around Texas listening to you, and it just happened to remind me of that just at that moment. Because you know how like a sound, and it was just your voice, it just triggers something. I was like, oh, it just reminded me of that. And I go, it's funny, I'm going to be talking to him this week. But I didn't, and that is even more memories because I didn't even know you.
Weird that
then.
you think about me so much. I can be honest with
I
you.
know,
I feel uncomfortable over here.
Yeah, a little. It's a good thing there's half a country between us.
Wow, jeez. No, weird guys up there in New Jersey or wherever the heck it is.
Massachusetts, you know the answer to that.
Same
Yeah,
thing.
just like you don't know that. Do you know how long? You and I were talking personally. You gave me some great advice. We'd been talking, but every time you talked about me on your podcast, you're like, "Who's this guy?" What's You're like, the what? The bright what? I don't know. Whatever that dumb podcast.
Whatever that guy's name is.
It was
Oh
so.
my God. People get so mad at me when I do that.
I know.
They're so angry. They get like, why you hate DJ so much? I'm like,
And they probably didn't even know me yet.
So many reasons. I mean, there's just so many. I can't even. I mean, where do you want me to start?
He won't stop texting me.
It's just, I mean, the guy just.
I know. I'm one of the people.
He's just using that. You can ask as many questions as you want at my podcast for his own personal benefit. Free advertising.
All right. With that,
the bright pool, whatever it's called, podcast.
So nice segue. So about my subwoofers.
Oh, right.
No, but yeah, that's. So here's a funny thing. My buddy, who's been into home theater as long as I have, he used to work at a Radio Shack back when I first started out, and I used to do the old upgrade swap when you go in. Yeah, I'm just returning this. Had it for 2 months, a receiver or whatever. He texted me the other day. He goes, "I'm such a dumbass," and I go, "What'd you do?" He was using Odyssey EQ, and he didn't know that when you were done. After you've done everything with your iPad, you had to upload. So he never he did the EQ, but he never actually applied it to, so he's like, oh, this sounds great, but it wasn't applied. He had heard it on, I don't know where he had heard it, but I was like, oh, I am so sorry. Because he asked me, I go, oh, use this. But that's one of those common sense things that you and I, like, I've Odyssey EQ'd so many, every time I upgrade something, I run an Odyssey EQ, right? Yeah. But then you upload the old one to see if you can hear it so you know that. But he's not a tinkerer. He just wants it done and play, and like, I just want it to know it's good. But that's what's great about your podcast. And you guys say it, people sometimes have said on your podcast, oh, these are repeat questions and stuff. But that's the point. It's like people need this information. And it's like, unfortunately, John doesn't listen to your podcast.
Yeah, well.
Because he's not a tinkerer like us.
That's all right. I don't blame him. I don't listen. I don't listen to it either.
I know you don't listen to it. You have to listen to Rob to find out what happened.
That's right. Rob's got to tell me. What did we talk about last week? I don't remember. Yeah. So, it's why he puts the pictures in there more than once. Like when we talk about stuff, he'll say we've already answered this guy's question once, and he's got some more. And he's like, and now there'll be like the slew of pictures in there. I'm like, oh, because I'll remember the pictures. I won't remember the person or what they're talking about. I mean, there's just too many of them. And it's a lot of them are named John for some reason. We get like all these Johns.
It's a common name.
It is.
The first time I filled in for you was like on the very short notice, and he gives me.
Yes.
He sent me all the information, and I printed it because I'm like, I don't know how am I. I'm like, now I'm thinking I gotta. Yeah, I'm thinking I got to be prepared, and then I forgot who I was replacing. The guy that's not prepared.
I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
I just read it.
Yeah, exactly. But I showed my wife the thick piece of paper. I'm like, look at all of this stuff.
Look at this stuff.
And Rob does that every week.
He does it every week. It's hours of work. But I mean, and I've talked about it. I'm like, dude, I want your life to be easier. I want you not to have to do all this. I'm like, we can change the format of the podcast. He's like, no, I like it. I'm like, okay.
No, he does.
And we have talked about it, and we probably, I mean, it's not sustainable. We will at some point, the podcast will continue to evolve as we change. I mean, his life is, especially for the last 18 months. I mean, what has changed? It's just been, we've just been all in a holding pattern. But as we're coming hopefully out of this pandemic, getting closer and closer to things getting back to normal, I feel like people have spent the last however many months, you know, they tried cooking, they tried woodworking, they tried, fixing up stuff around their house, and they kind of figured out the things that they like and they don't like, and what's
Right.
important, what's not important, which is why we're having, I mean, this is my own talking from my own personal experience, with my kids trying to find jobs and stuff like that. While we're having this kind of labor shortage, just people are like, I don't want to waste my time as much as I did
Right.
before, and I feel like my time is more valuable than what I used to be getting paid. So, as we're moving forward, we're going to get out, we're going to get out more. Rob is very cautious. He's got a lot of relatives that are quite old and quite vulnerable. So he's been extremely careful. And I, of course, have got my kids, and I've got my parents who live close by as well. So, I've been careful as well, but we're starting to kind of emerge from our cocoons. And as we do, the podcast, it's going to keep going in some form, one way or the other. And I really, like I said, I'm tongue in cheek about not liking the format, but I do. I mean, I like answering people's questions, and it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me informed, and there's so much new stuff out there, and it as it comes out, we're able to talk about it right away. And 'cause our listeners a lot of times are the ones who are like, hey, this was just announced in Germany, and Rob and I look at each other like, I never would have found that.
Yeah.
I
Oh
never
my God.
I never would have come up with that one. So it's good to have that real good connection with your audience.
Oh yeah. And it amazes me. And I had a listener this week, thank me. And he's like, you have no idea what you do. And I was like, no, that goes both ways, because I am a listener of podcasts. So I know what it's like to appreciate the podcast. The listeners, I don't think they understand how much it means to us when they do say stuff like that, because you're like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just you and Rob talking, or in my case, I'm not just sitting down by myself to do this. I went out on a limb and did it by myself. But then once you get people commenting, and it's like, I don't care if it's 50 people or 1 million. You're just like, hey, thanks. And I made the comment a couple weeks ago. Somebody my podcast dropped, and like an hour later, they're like, this was awesome. I'm like, are you kidding? Somebody's waiting to hear my voice? Like, and that stuff really gets to you, and it drives you. And that's, I mean, obviously your show is listener driven. And it's a great feeling. And I can't thank the listeners enough.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Off topic, because we still haven't even gotten to the crow yet.
Is there a topic? I mean,
yeah, well,
we haven't been on topic yet.
Exactly. Way off topic, though. Not even home
theater. You've just been stroking your listeners' egos from what I've heard.
You've had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah, I had a birthday.
Yeah. You got yourself a bike.
I did.
Tell me about it. I'm a cyclist.
It's back in the shop. It's immediately.
Oh,
back
no.
in the shop. Yeah, it's in the shop right now.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything. It's so it's been, right now bikes are extremely hard to come by. So I took what I did.
What is it?
It's a road bike. So it's from a brand. It's a company called Coratec. They are out of Germany. It's
okay.
They aren't very well imported here. There's one shop up north in Clearwater from where I live, and they sell them. It's a good brand, but the bike shop, the local bike shop I frequent, because it's the closest one to my house, has had one, and it's had one for a couple of years, and it's just not sold. For whatever reason, and I was in there. I was like, okay, well, I want to at least give you guys a chance to sell me a bike, since they've treated me pretty good over the years. And they showed me this bike, and that was very nice. It was kind of the size, it was in the price range I wanted, everything else. But then my wife was like, okay, well, let's, we should check out what else is in the neighborhood. So we went shopping all over the place. So, almost the exact same bike was offered to me at another shop for like twice the price because it was a couple of years newer. Now, I don't really care that much about how new it is or how
Right.
the components and everything else were exactly the same. It was just, it had a couple of upgrades over the one that I was seeing. So I got it. And when I got it, there were some problems with the front derailleur. The chain was binding up as it was switching between the big ring and the small ring.
Yep.
So there, the guy was like, yeah, this is not gonna. He goes, you go ride it, and we'll adjust it. He kind of dialed it in as best he could, and said, okay, if you have any problems, bring it back. So I was having problems with it, so I brought it back. So they're gonna swap out the whole front, basically. I can never remember what they need. The bottom bracket's got to be switched out. The chain drive part at the front. They're gonna put Integra parts up there. So. I mean, everything else is Integra anyways, but this from the factory, it came with an oval ring from a company called Rotor, and I liked it fine. It worked really well. It just didn't shift very well up front. In the back, it shifts like butter, but in the front, it was a problem. So they've got the whole thing torn up, and they're gonna replace that on there. But it's a carbon bike.
Nice.
I really didn't want carbon, to be honest with you. I wanted aluminum because aluminum was light enough for me. I didn't really need carbon, but carbon's a little bit more fragile. But
how are your roads down there though? Your roads are pretty good.
Oh yeah, I mean everything's flat.
Yeah. But I mean like the texture of them. That's where the carbon really pays off. It's like up here, our roads are beat to crap because of the winters. So when I went to a carbon, I knew you could feel the difference. It less wear and tear on your body just riding. You go for a long ride on a carbon compared to an aluminum, and you're not as worn out just physically from sitting on a bike.
Right. And I noticed that as well. And I like gained like 3 miles an hour average on all of my rides.
Yeah.
No matter what. So
I used to do that just by buying a new piece because you're so excited to have a new piece. Just like home theater equipment, be like, I got a new shifter.
Everything sounds better.
I'm so much faster.
Yeah. I'm pretty I'm pretty sensitive about those things because I know psychologically how you can affect yourself. But I did a 40. I mean the fastest I've ever gone on a shorter ride was about 25 miles, and we were averaging around 17.5 miles an hour, which is fine. I mean, that's most casual riders would think that was fast. Most serious riders would go, good try. So, and then the last ride I did before I took the bike in to have it serviced was 40 miles, and I did 19 and a half average, which was quite a bit faster. And those were on the same bike both times. Oh no, the first time the 17 and a half was the fastest I ever got on my old bike, which was a like chrome alloy steel behemoth thing. So that one's quite a bit heavier, and it just doesn't have all the bells and whistles that this one does. So I'm real happy with it. It's pretty. That also helps. I think that you're going to enjoy something more if you just like it, period.
Yeah.
And I had another bike that was offered to me. It was a lot more expensive and arguably better in some ways, but worse in others. And it was aluminum with chrome, what do you call it? Chrome forks. It was still pretty light, but it was red, and I just can't stand red. It's just like I would have been fine with it. I would have been fine with it, but this one's yellow and black, mostly black with yellow highlights.
Yep.
And those are my two favorite colors, and I was super excited that it was the right color. So I know that's stupid, but it is. I think it made a difference. It made a difference in me wanting it over the other one.
Yeah.
So that's what
I got a gray. I went with gray with white accents, and then now I can change. Like I'll change the seat color, the tape color, the pedal colors, and jazz it up that way if I want.
Everybody I know has black bikes now. Black is like the only color people buy anymore is black. And but those things cycle in and out of style like crazy. Like you go into if you can see a bike in the bike shop, they're all black with like iridescent lettering for and that's the new hotness. I'm like, whatever.
Do you ride with an active GPS? Like, do you know your pace when you're riding?
Yeah. I have a computer now. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I used to just use Strava on my phone, but I got a computer about a month ago.
Yeah, because that's when I upgraded to that back before GPS. When I was riding years ago, I upgraded to that. That's when my numbers started to go way up because you could see right away what your average was, and boom, 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 everything would go up from there. And
I've got like 3 different guys I ride with, and it's funny because they're all totally different. Like, one guy never wants to lead, but he's fast. And he's got the stamina, right? So if you put him up front, suddenly you're going 24 miles an hour, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, why did we let him lead?" And then he'll drop back, and he's perfectly fine going 18. Right? He doesn't care. I've got another guy who, we are all actively trying to get him not to buy a computer because if he knows that he's going over 15 miles an hour, he'll slow down.
Oh no!
It's brutal. It's brutal. He'll just slow down. And I've got another guy who's fast, but he also doesn't like to be passed, like at all. He does not like to be passed. So he'll ride next to me as we'll be talking, and he'll be right next to me, and I don't like to be passed either. So he'll speed up a little bit, so I'll speed up to catch him, and then I'll go a little bit ahead of him, and then he'll speed up to catch me. And next thing we know, we're both going 21 miles an hour, struggling to talk to each other and finish our conversation because we're like, we've been puffing away at, he's like, "Oh, we gotta slow down." I'm like, "I'm not the one going fast, you're going fast." He goes, "I'm not going fast, you're going fast." I'm like, "Oh God, all right, somebody needs to stop going fast." Slow down here. We still got like 50 miles left on this stupid ride, and we just started, so stop it.
Yep.
He's famous for saying, "Oh, I'm going to take it easy today," and then just hitting the gas. And we're like, hey, it's not as downhill as you think it is, buddy. But yeah, I am enjoying riding. It's like a year and a half now, maybe about a year and a half. So I'm still
since you bought your spandex.
No, it's been less than that since I bought the spandex. Since I got on the bike, I got the spandex. I still have the same stuff too. I've got like 2 outfits. All these people are like
you have a bib or just
outfits.
Shorts and a shirt?
I have bibs. I bought
bibs.
Cheap bibs. Yeah, that made a big difference as far as comfort wise for me. I don't like the shorts as much. But
bibs are better.
I handed down all the shorts to everybody else. So now my wife wears my old shorts. My other son, no, I think I don't remember. I think I handed them down to one of the other ones and stuff. And it's just, because every once in a while we go mountain biking, and you definitely want some shorts when you're mountain biking.
Yeah.
Because your backside will not be the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Let's get into The Crow from 1994. I had heard you mention a while back one of your favorite movies. I was like,
arguably my all-time favorite movie. My all-time favorite movie.
And I was like, what the, we had said, I don't know if we recorded it or not. I'll repeat it again. People think we're opposites. You're Mr. Negative. I'm Mr. Positive. The more I listen to you, it's like we're the same, but I just portray Mr. Positive and you portray
You're a half
Mr.
full
Negative.
and I'm a half empty. That's the only difference. It's the same cup.
Exactly. But we have the same opinions on everything. I just don't express my negativity. You love it.
Well, I mean, I think that's important that people understand how they can improve.
And that's why that's why you keep telling me how to improve.
That's right.
Exactly.
I'm telling you.
Did you notice behind me?
I don't know what that is. What is it's Star Wars?
Star Wars. It's the original poster from Return of the Jedi. If you
is
look,
that Revenge of the Jedi?
It's the Revenge of the Jedi poster. See?
Oh,
see, but that's all there because of you. Because you were my first. You were my first guest, and I had all of my. It's a bookshelf behind that.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with the bookshelf.
And you made fun of me.
And I'm going to tell you right now, there's nothing wrong with the bookshelf. This doesn't mean I'm not going to make fun of you.
I know. No, and I was like, you know what? That is a little bit too busy back there. So I put up the black curtains and put the poster on it because, like, you could see. I won't. It'll all fall apart.
There's a part, I think you should. iron those curtains a little bit. You got a little wrinkle.
I know on this
over his shoulder.
and now I'm going to.
Now when we're pointing out stuff that's wrong here.
Yeah, exactly. Do you notice my nose is crooked too?
So go ahead. Go ask your dad if this is good enough. And every kids are like, I don't want to ask the dad if it's good enough. Can't you just say it's good enough? She's like, nah, you got to go ask your dad.
No, but you motivate me. You pointed it out,
Good.
and I was like, yeah, it's a little too busy. Good. All right, I'll do that.
Right.
So that's the Tom Andry backdrop.
Okay.
We'll call it that.
Until it's the Tom Andry Memorial backdrop. For now, it's just not.
Then it'll just be a poster.
Mm-hmm. It'll be a picture of DJ dancing on the grave.
Oh, all right. So all right, your history. How did you, did you see this in the theaters and just fall in love with it? And
I did. I lived in San Francisco.
Okay.
I was living in San Francisco at the time with my girlfriend, and I had a roommate, and this was like right up my alley. This was, the height of grunge.
Yep.
Right. So this was, like I said,
it's a great grunge movie.
So right. It didn't have Pearl Jam in it. Who didn't have on the soundtrack? It
Soundgarden, I think it was.
No, it wasn't Soundgarden. It was. I actually have the stupid thing open right here. It was. What was the name of that band? Anyways, I'll find it. But they. I'm not going to look for it right now. But they. It had a bit of a grungeness to it, but I was also like just emerging out of my goth shell. Like in high school and late high school, early college, I wasn't like paint your face goth, but I was like dress all in black, had black trench coats in the summer in California and everything else goth. So long hair and I was the kind of guy that your daughter brought home to make her dad mad. Yeah, like I just looked the part. I had it down. So this was right up my alley, and I have always to this day, and I think this is played out that my generation, my gender, loves revenge flicks. Like they call them like dad. What do they call them? Like dad porn now or something like that, where it's just this the whole Keanu Reeves, everything he's been doing, all the Bruce Willis movies of late, they're all these kind of revenge flicks, and I love revenge flicks. I absolutely love them. I think it just is very cathartic for me, and this was one of the ones that I really connected with. I had long hair at the time. I had all the clothes he wore. It looked like I had everything. I had all that back then. Of course, I wore flannel tied around my waist.
Yeah,
but other than that, I had the rest of it. So the Crow is still one of my go-to costumes for Halloween. Like it's just
still
I can literally just grab stuff out of my closet and I will still be able to dress as the Crow any day of the week. I've still got the makeup. I've got everything in there. I can always do the Crow. So this one really connected with me. I saw it in the theater in San Francisco. I wish I could remember the name of the theater because I saw it there probably 7 or 8 times. We went nightly to see that movie because I liked it so much. It's just a fantastic. It's like one of the better. I think back then it was DTS. I want to say it was a DTS theater or Dolby theater. It was whatever
could have been
nice theater was back then. This was post Jurassic Park,
right? The year after, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so DTS was out.
Theaters were getting much better, and I remember seeing this theater was across the street from another theater. I think there was 2 theaters right nearby. And I think the one across the street was like the really loud one. I saw a Forrest Gump there, and they had the train opening. If you've ever seen the train opening,
oh yeah,
and it was so loud I literally covered my ears. I'm like, this is reference level. Thank you, no, thank you. I've already done this. I don't need to do it again. But yes, I saw this movie 7, 8, 9 times in the theaters. I think pretty easily. And then when it came out, I was a poor starving college student, so I dubbed it onto those 6-hour VHS tapes that you could buy. So I had The Rocketeer, The Crow, and Dangerous Liaisons on the same
6-hour
tape. and there was one, the actor, and I don't remember his name right now. The actor who's the guy in the in the shop, the
Oh yeah, the pawn shop.
the pawn shop guy. He's in all three of those movies.
That's hysterical.
So I had him in all three of those movies, and it was like so weird that he's in all three of these movies. But so in all three, like, I love The Rocketeer, but I love Dangerous Liaisons, and and The Crow is one of my all-time favorite movies.
I just pulled it up. It's John Polito.
That's it.
He's Gideon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's wicked funny.
Yes. Wicked.
What did you say? Wicked?
Wicked funny.
Wicked
That's
funny.
Right.
You're making fun of my New Jersey accent.
That's all right. Your Jersey
It's
accent.
Boston.
Whatever. It's all the same.
So when seeing it that many times, what was it like when now you were into home theater shortly after Jurassic Park? That came out on we know your Jurassic Park story,
right,
and watching that.
So I did not have a theater system back then. So this was right. I was discovering home theater right around the same time this was coming out. So this may have come out a little bit before that, because I mean, I got Jurassic Park on VHS and widescreen like right soon after it came out. Soon after it came out on that, and back then the lead times for
like
VHS were like a year.
Yeah.
Year and a half or something like that, depending on when they wanted to release them. So this is right around that same time, but it feels to me like I saw The Crow in the theater before I saw my first home theater. I had my first home theater experience. So yeah, but that was about the same time. But yeah. Sound back then wasn't that important to me. I knew I liked this one theater, and I knew it was because it was, it sounded good, but sound back then wasn't quite as important to me. It wasn't until after it wasn't until after Jurassic Park, and then having seen movies and then I went and saw The Crow in a different theater, and I was like, well, this sucks. So I went back to the original one. That's when I started caring about movie theater sound. Was about the same time.
Oh, so The Crow was instrumental in your home theater evolution.
Probably. I mean, it's probably fair enough to say. Yeah.
So
probably more accurate enough.
What would you see now? I watched this movie last week, and I can't really think, like, other than the scene. And now, typically, when I break down a movie, I'll go minute by minute and I'll break the whole thing down. But I learned my lesson, because when I come on with you, we never get to that stuff.
No,
so I didn't do it. So, but I do remember, the scene when was the guy with the knives?
Yep.
Not TT.
Tintin.
Tintin. That scene there, I always loved that scene when Eric would throw the knife, the Crow. He throws the knife, and then what a lot of people don't realize is, watching that scene, he's right behind the knife.
Yeah.
That's how fast he gets to him, like the superpower that he has, because he stabs him and then he's right behind him. That's about the only scene I could think of note for sound, because you can actually track that knife across the screen in your home theater. Other than that, I think it's just about the music. I thought the bass was okay, but I can't really say that this movie is just like, oh my God, it's a great sounding home theater movie.
No, and it was it the director's name? What's his name? Arnofsky? Something like that. Is that right? Alex. Something. Hold on a second. Where's the cast, crew, or something like that? I don't know. Come on. IMDb.
Alex Proyas.
That's it. This was like his first movie. That he was able to really do anything with. So it was the first time he got to direct a movie, and he was really pushing the limits of what he could do with the budget that he had. So it's there's definitely some special effects in there that aren't so special. I mean, even the scene you're talking about, and because of the death of Brendan Lee, even the scene you're talking about is out of order. So
Yeah.
the Tintin fight scene was supposed to happen later. If you look at the other things that happened in the movie, you can kind of piece together what the actual timeline is. And I used to have it all straight in my head because I had seen the movie so many times in the theater. But you can tell that Tintin's happens later because of what he says. He says that Halloween isn't until Manana, which means that that fight happened during the evening of Devil's Night, which was not yet because there were still other things that happened in the movie before Devil's Night actually showed up, which happens later in the movie. So it's there's some issues with the timing as far as like the editing, like they had to re-edit things. I know there's characters they cut out, things that they weren't able to finish filming and all of that because of his death. But I feel like ultimately sometimes having some hardship that goes along with filming and editing and stuff like that. I feel like that sometimes makes movies better in some ways.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you can look at Star Wars and say the original Star Wars was great, maybe a masterpiece, maybe one of the best movies ever made, and it has slowly morphed into something that I physically would not watch. You'd have to strap me down to a chair to see the newer versions of it, simply because George Lucas had the money, power, and time to screw with it and to make things better. And I feel like him being under budget constraints and everything else, and not being able to do certain things made the movie better because he couldn't do all the stuff he wanted to do.
Yeah,
which is if you look at the prequels, you're like, what he really wanted to do was show a lot of ships taking off and landing. That's what he wanted to do. And because he couldn't do that, he instead had to have characters talking to each other, which is why we love Star Wars so much.
Right.
Because nobody wants to see that.
But what's funny is, you're absolutely right. It's like hardships, difficulties are what generate creativity. Yeah. And look at Jaws. Jaws is the best example.
Yeah.
Oh, the shark's not working yet? All right, let's try this. And we end up with that epic pacing that we might not have had the shark worked on day one. And what have you watched the movies that made us on Netflix?
No.
Okay. Check that out.
I will.
Season 1, season 2 each have 4 movies in them. Season 3 just dropped last week, I think. It's got
I saw
8
that.
movies.
I was looking at that and I was curious about it.
But almost every single one of those movies is about the hardships that it took to make those movies that you were like, they never should have been made. And it goes into the only one that you probably wouldn't enjoy because you already know everything about it is Jurassic Park. But all the hardships that went into making
I would. Yeah, I would be interested in that too.
But I watched it and I was like, okay, I've heard of this. I've heard of the hurricane. I've heard of it. I've heard all the stuff. I didn't find as much in it, but they like Back to the Future. All of the things that was supposed to be written a certain way, and they had to change it. All of the behind the scenes stuff that the difficulties they were put under. And I hate to say that, I'm like, we're talking about the difficulties. It was Brendan Lee died. It's more than a difficulty, but there were other difficulties
too, like and stuff
like that. He wanted to do it in black and white, and the studio didn't want him to. Did you know that one?
Yeah, I did, and that's why it is so washed out most of the time, and everything's filmed so dark because he's like, well, if I can't have it in black and white, I'm going to do. Well, he wanted to make it more like a comic book, and if you actually read the comic, the comic as well, the original comic, the original comic is nothing like that movie.
No,
it is so divorced from that movie. There are scenes that are in there. The scene where the mother is the name for God on the hearts and minds of all children, or the lips of all children. I can't remember the exact line right now. That's, I think, in there. I think that whole scene is in there. I think the joke is in there as well, if I remember correctly. But the crow is not the same. That has nothing to do with his power. There's a lot of other things that are different. His psychology is totally different. He's much darker. Brendan Lee, Brendan Lee's character was very much lightened up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
For this, he was made much more heroic and much less damaged. Than the Crow was in the actual comic book. So all of those changes, I believe, came out of them looking at what they had filmed, what they had done, and going, okay, in the last movie that Brandon Lee made, be him being this drugged, because the original Crow does just all, like, he finds the drugs, he does the drugs. I mean, it doesn't really affect him in the same way because he's dead, but he still does them, and he shoots himself up with all the heroin from Fun Boy and all that other stuff. He does all that, and it's very weird. And he's very self-destructive in the comic. And I think they cut a lot of that out, and I think it's for the betterment. It's the better of the movie. But I mean, we can't say that having a hardship or having a movie go through hardships necessarily creates a diamond out of a piece of coal or whatever, because we have Waterworld, right? Waterworld is the same thing. They had a big thing, they built a big thing, and it sank in a hurricane. They built it again, and they still ended up with Waterworld, which I have never made it all the way through. To be honest with you, so.
I actually don't mind that movie, but that's me.
That sounds like you.
There's one. What we were talking about earlier. Like There's one. No, but I do understand. It's I'm like, anyways. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. But some of the best the greatest movies definitely had hardships. It's like, it's very rare that you'll hear about like the greatest movie ever, and then they'll be like, everything went perfectly. We couldn't believe it.
Got done wrapped shooting, a month early. Everybody got a bonus. And we had dinner at the director's house and went on our way. I mean,
the best artists are of anything, whether it's your paint, music, actors, they're all disturbed. They have a hardship. They're drawing on something.
I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that. The idea of the tortured artist is always is very fanciful and romanticized. But you can look in the video game industry and see how that idea that we have to push ourselves beyond our limits and suffer in order for our art has become has been used by corporations and people in power to just wring other people underneath them dry. Now, if it's a collaborative effort and people are all buying into the movie and the thing that they're creating, well, that's one thing. But when we're manufacturing hardship like crunch times and everything else, I think that it's I think it's used a little bit more like a weapon. But and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes here. I don't know how everybody felt about this. It seemed like everybody was trying to create a really good product here and doing everything they could based on the constraints that they had. And then there was the tragedy of Brendan Lee dying, that must have made everybody sit down and go, okay, now let's see what we have, and then let's make some hard decisions based on that, because they did have to bring in body doubles for him. They did have to shoot some scenes and do a little bit of CGI that was kind of groundbreaking for the time. Yeah. Though clearly CGI. Even then I was like, I mean, that's not how broken mirrors work. But okay, well, I'm gonna go with it because
that was one of the scenes, like day one when I saw that in the theater, I was like, okay, I found that one.
Yeah, that was not that hard. Yeah,
like it was. But it's like, that's one of the things.
The Cure. That's the song that's playing in the background. There is The Cure.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I think the one you were looking for earlier is Stone Temple Pilots.
Stone Temple Pilots. Yes,
that's the big one. That was big. I think
that
song's barely played in the movie.
it's
in a car.
Driving. They're driving for a few seconds and that's it, and it's gone.
Yeah,
and I don't even like the song. I don't even like the Cure song. Was way better. I had the whole soundtrack, and I was like, the soundtrack blows. It's just really bad. But I love the movie, so it's fine.
Oh yeah. What was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say a second ago,
CGI,
CGI. No. Maybe
body
it was
doubles.
maybe it was a CGI.
Oh my God, I got the biggest argument with my roommate back then. He's like, somebody must have taught Brandon Lee how to walk because he walks in the church and he pushes open those doors and he walks into that church. And he's
Yeah.
like, he just walks so cool. Somebody must have taught him how to walk. I'm like, he's just walking. It's not that hard. I mean, he's just walking with his head down. I can do it. Watch. Ugh. He's
Yeah,
like, no,
exactly.
you're not doing it right. Brandon Lee did it way better than you. I'm like, all right. I'm not having this argument with you.
Yeah.
But
okay, let's see. In real life, if somebody walked in a room like that, you would think they're kind of a jerk. Like, who walks in a room and goes, "I'm here."
Well, I mean, pro wrestlers. I mean, let's start with them.
That's what I'm saying. I said real life.
Oh my God, my roommate back then was very much enamored with that scene in particular. I've seen this movie so many times. I actually saw it from the front corner, like the front row, maybe the front 2 rows of a theater, way off to the side because that was the only seat that was left. I saw the whole movie from up there, and that was it. And it was awful. It was awful seeing it from there.
Yeah.
Couldn't understand anything that was going on the screen. But that's how much I like this movie. I sat through it.
Now you have the Blu-ray, right?
I don't
That's all they
remember if
have.
I have the Blu-ray. I think I do. Yeah, I think I have the Blu-ray. I've had. I mean, I've owned it in various.
Did you ever have a Laserdisc player?
No, I never had a Laserdisc player. No.
Okay.
I didn't. No. That was a little bit before. It was before mine. VHS was the earliest I had. I owned personally.
Right.
I had a friend.
By the time you got into home theater, DVD was big.
When I first got into home theater, it was still VHS, and I was buying the widescreen editions of everything. And then DVDs came out, and that was probably 2 years. I want to say 2 years, 3 years later, maybe. Oh no, that doesn't sound right either. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Because I had Laserdisc through the 90s, and then DVDs came out around 97.
Right. So I think my first nice blue DVD player I bought with my wife. So that would have been, 2000. Right around 2000. Yeah, 2000.
Yeah, when DVDs came out, the guy I was buying Laserdiscs off of was like, he was so against DVDs. He goes, they're smaller, it's all compressed, it's not the same, it's not as good.
Because that's how compression works.
Yeah. It was funny. And it ended up, I would love to find the guy today because it put him out of business. He didn't adopt the new tech. And he just stuck to his guns and said Laserdisc was better. And next thing you know, he's out of business. And I haven't seen him since, but I used to hang out and talk to him about home theater for hours. Right. But would you like to see this thing get remastered?
Well, yes. I mean, I would. See, there are
But wouldn't it have to be done by, like, wouldn't the director Alex, whatever his last name is,
Proyas or Proyas?
Wouldn't he have to be a part of it? Like,
I don't think so. I absolutely don't think so.
Really?
I mean, I would want him to be.
Yeah.
But do I think he needs to? I want to say. So Clint used to work for a audio mixing studio for quite a few years, and when he first got there, I don't want to be wrong about this, but I think I'm right. When he first got there, they put you into a studio and let you play with the equipment to get used to it, and to know what you were doing, and and then I don't know exactly what they give you assignments or other things, but I think they gave him the crow and said, remix this or mix the sound in this movie. I think. I know they gave him a movie, and I know it's one of my favorite movies, and I think it was The Crow. I just don't remember 100% for sure. But the problem with remastering some of these movies is that they were never filmed with with surround sound in mind. So everything's happening directly on the screen. So having, 3D immersive audio doesn't really bring a whole lot to it necessarily. I mean, sometimes you can, but I don't necessarily think that the director needs to be there for it. I think that sure that their input would be helpful.
I was thinking picture-wise though for the director, where he wanted to do black and white, where it's like that. I mean, how cool would it be if they got the director and you got a black and white version, you got a remastered, theatrical release. I think that, I mean, it has a huge cult following. I mean, there's money to be made with this disc.
Well, I would think so, but I mean, I'm certainly very biased by it. I don't necessarily. I would be fine. Let's put it this way. So Logan, right? Logan on 4K when that came out, it's got a regular version. It's got the noir version.
Yes,
and
I prefer the noir.
And people have said that, and I'm like, I get that. I get why you would, and I understand it. But I haven't watched it, and the chances of me watching it are quickly diminishing to zero. I'm just never gonna watch this.
How come?
Version. I just don't have any interest.
So you've seen the movie though, right?
I have seen it quite a few times. Yes.
Okay, you've seen it quite a few times, but
I've always watched the regular version. Yes.
That's funny. You should try it though, because he shot this in black. I mean, that's what I think is so great about it. It's because of it basically, the noir version is what this movie really is. It's like, it's a dark version, right? But it's also the lighting, the contrast, Tom. It looks so good. It just,
well, you have a 4K display, right? With HDR and all that stuff. You see, I don't have that. I just have a regular 1080p projector. So I'm going to miss a little bit of that.
It's still evident though, I would say.
And I actually think that, the black and white that is the Crow versus the color that sometimes comes out from underneath him, especially underneath the mask or the makeup, especially towards the end when he starts to lose his powers and all of that. I think that to me is important, and the fact that other people are alive and that they have color is also important. I don't necessarily think that at least to me, as somebody who's viewed it as many times as I have, I've watched it. I've even watched it with most of my kids. I probably shouldn't have, but I have. But So would I would like that to be a reality? I mean, there's certainly some things that could be fixed in the movie, like the CGI scene we were just talking about with the mirror. I think could be cleaned up a little bit.
His hands healing. Those are pretty.
That's pretty painful, but okay for the time. But it was still not super great. But yes, some of those things could be cleaned up. And there was a lot of use of miniatures in there because they just didn't have the drone technology that we have now, where they can fly over the top of any city they want,
anywhere,
make it look fantastic. Which all I think. They did a really good, there's some scenes where you're like, they did such a good job of covering up how bad the special effects were. Like the scene, the overhead scene when
he's running.
No, the guy is driving the car. What's his name?
It's not Fun Boy, is it?
No. It's the guy who's always Skank.
Oh yeah, in the little car.
And he's got a car. He goes, gosh darn. Except that's not what he says. Gosh darn foreign cars, and you laugh because it's like, oh look, it looks like a little toy car. It is a toy car. It is a toy car, and they all looked at it and went, well, this looks terrible. How are we going to fix this? And somebody went, let's just voice over a joke, and people will laugh, and then it all works together. Right. It works together. And I thought, well, you know what? That's what we're talking about before about hardship. That is the epitome of this. That joke which is a joke that still lands today. Like, I've seen the movie 20 something times probably. I still laugh at that joke. The stupid onion joke does not, it landed the first time, and after that I never laughed at it again. Okay, when the little girl was like, "Onions make you fart big time."
Right.
I was like, "That's a terrible joke. It's not funny. It's not her fault. I mean, she delivered the line
Yeah.
fine, but the joke about the car still hits, and it's because of the physical humor that's going along with it at the same time, and it covers up perfectly the fact that it was a miniature toy car being driven down a toy street, and it looks terrible.
Toy Street.
But it works. It works.
Yeah. But that's what I think would be weird is if they did. That's why I asked, would you like to see a remastered version? Because some of that, when you go to, like, when I did Jaws and you can see like in 4K and all the detail and high def, all of this stuff, right? And you look and they have that shark strung up and you can see that the eyeball on the shark they have strung up was done with a Sharpie. You know, and it's like, but when they made the movie, nobody would ever thought that it'd be like, oh, somebody's going to be able to just draw it on. You can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah.
Now
that's the thing.
You can. And this movie here, if you don't remaster it properly, it's going to pull out a bunch of stuff that's going to make it seem weird.
Even worse.
Worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so my personal opinion about remasters and not remakes, but remasters and updates and that sort of stuff when they try to take an older movie and take it to the new format and stuff. When they go back to the original masters, that's exactly right. A lot of stuff was hidden by the resolution.
Yeah.
No one's going to be able to see this in the theaters. If you go to a really old movie, you're talking about, it's going to go by so fast, nobody's going to notice. We're not going to be able to pause it and see that there's a Starbucks cup there, which we can do now, and people do all the time. But I'm not so much a purist. I do complain about George Lucas quite a bit because of all the stuff he did. And in fact, if it wasn't for George Lucas, I would probably be like, yeah, you can update everything. I'd be fine. Because most people don't. They just do the bare minimum to make it look similar to what you expect to see when it gets updated. Right. So you CGI and a freaking eyeball on the shark, right? Great. That's fine. I'm okay with that. You're not changing the content. You're not adding characters or anything else. I even liked the first time George Lucas started messing with Star Wars, the first couple of remasters, just added in, like, when they were walking through Cloud City, they had these like big windows that had nothing past them, and they just CGI'd stuff behind them. I was like, this is great. I got no problems with that.
Yeah.
That's not changing anything. It's not distracting me.
No, it just expanded the universe a little bit.
I thought that was great.
More open. Yeah.
They changed some of the, they had more animals running around and more ships in the air. Fine, whatever. That stuff doesn't bother me at all. And if they did that with The Crow, I would be fine with that as well. But you're right. They can go too far, and that line probably is what requires the director's input more than anything else.
Right.
The director needs to be there to make sure that, as long as the director is not George Lucas, needs to be there in order to make sure that they keep it within the scope of what it should be, true to the original film. So yeah, I tend to be more forgiving of them adding or modifying things slightly. You can. I am also feel I can go both ways on director's cuts. So a lot of director's cuts I think are masturbatory. It's just the director wanting to not give up all the stuff they had to give up to hit the runtime. Sometimes hitting that runtime, major movies suck less because if you had all that extra stuff in there. But you can look at a movie like The Descent, which is another one of my favorite movies, and the end of that movie is completely different. Like the whole movie, like I've seen that movie so many times that I can tell you if something has changed in the middle of that movie, and if the director's cut has 3 extra minutes of movie in the middle of it, I couldn't find it. From the beginning to almost the very end, I couldn't find it. But the director's cut has a different ending, and the ending in the director's cut is a bajillion times better than the one that's in the theatrical release. It's not even close. It is a completely different movie based on the end of the movie, and in cases like that, you're like, okay, you have to kind of go both ways. You have to evaluate the movie on its merits. And The Crow, if it were to be remastered, I would be doing the same. And as somebody who loves the original movie, I would think I would be pretty critical, but I know me, and I would probably be like, well, just don't mess it up. Just don't make it too bad.
Yeah.
And fix that CGI. Fix that one CGI.
Well, I just did Psycho a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Psycho in 4K. And obviously Hitchcock wasn't around to help them remaster that.
I mean,
it's awesome. Have you seen it?
Nope, I have not.
It's awesome.
I haven't seen Psycho in decades.
The remaster of that came out. I was blown away, to be honest with you. It's just, and I had mentioned it's in DTSX.
Oh, nice.
And what I said, I was like, I called it responsibly done.
Okay.
And one of my listeners, he goes, it was, I forget how exactly he put it. It was like, he put it much better than I could. And I said it in my podcast a couple, like afterwards, but it's like, you would think it's like, what the heck is this? I saw that it was DTSX. I'm like, oh no. Cause this movie came out in 1960 and you think it's going to be, but they didn't. They left everything up to the front and it was done very well. And that's what I would hope for the same for something like, now I'm not saying The Crow is Psycho, but you would hope for the same thing, that it would be just as responsibly done, where we play along with the music. And like you said, the sound effects in this movie aren't what made this movie. So
I'll be honest with you. That moment where he jumps onto the roof, the very first time he's running across the roofs, and he jumps and he hits the ground, and you hear the boom of his feet hitting the ground.
Yeah,
that is one of the most disappointing bass hits in all of cinema. If they just goosed that, if they did nothing else to the movie but fix that, that would be enough for me. Every single time that thing hits, I go check my subwoofers. I'm like, what is wrong with my system that doesn't sound right? Because it sounds like it should sound good,
right?
And it does not. It does not.
Yeah,
it sounds like all like 60 hertz and above. It's just like the subwoofers are barely engaged.
But see,
yes.
I don't think that would be irresponsible though to boost some bass, because they had bass in this back then. I mean, did you see The Doors in the theater with Val Kilmer?
I saw it. I don't remember if I saw it in the theater or not.
Holy
I don't remember
cow.
seeing it.
That was one of those. I absolutely love that movie in the theater, and that was actually told. They told the theaters to punch up the sound on that. And people were walking out. There were articles on it. That's how I found out about it, that they were told to punch it up because people were complaining that it was painful and it was too much. And it was insane. But that's what it was for, the music. It was to get you into, and you could feel it through that entire movie. And I loved that. But if you punch up some bass, like you said, or you sweeten some scenes like that with just the bass, I'm talking about like if they added in these weird pans that weren't there in the original. But bass would be great.
Right. And I mean, there's definitely some mixing that could be done in this movie. Like I said, the hard part would be, and I have a problem with this with current mixes as well. The camera will, like when you're talking about Gideon and he pours the rings into the shotgun.
Yeah.
Right. At some point, it cuts back to
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And when it does, there is still some sound coming from the rings. So the temptation would be, and is now in many movies, to put that sound behind you.
Correct.
And while that may be realistic, I still find it annoying and distracting many times. Like I don't necessarily need to be reminded that the camera has switched. I can see the camera has switched and I know the guy is behind me.
Right.
The times that I need that to be there is when I don't know where the person is and the sound clues me into where they are.
Right.
So that to me would be one of those moments where I'm like, I could prefer the original where that sound doesn't move around that much, or maybe they do it really well, and it would go behind you.
I have one for you.
Okay, what you got?
So, you remember Goonies?
Of course.
Okay, so I did Goonies last year when it came out on 4K, and the scene when they're on the porch. It's towards the beginning of the movie. It's raining out. All the kids are on the porch of the house, and I can't remember who. It's like not the bad guys, but somebody. They come up to the porch and they're talking to the people in the street. Well, one of the gutter on the porch, I believe, is on the right side when you're looking at the kids on the porch. But then the camera shifts to see the people in the street. So now the gutter and that gutter noise is loud on the right side of your screen the entire time, but it's not there as it's flipping. And I mentioned it in the podcast because it did annoy me.
Right.
It's very similar to exactly what you said, like, where maybe I know the one you're talking about because when I watched it last week with the rings, I was like, the rings aren't there anymore. Why am I still hearing them in front of me? But this gutter noise, the water running through the gutter off the side, I'm like, no, it's not over there anymore. It's still going. And they flip back and forth like 10 times.
Right. But you have to kind of make a decision there on whether or not you want the sound to keep flipping back and forth every time the camera flips, or you just say, just leave it where it is. Or my inkling would have been just don't worry about where it is, just make it come from the front, come from all around you.
Right.
Front of the room, all around you, something like, just pick a more generalized location and don't worry about it that much. But it's hard because we're not the ones in the booth. I'm sure they tried it all the different ways. I'm sure they got feedback from more than one person, and they decided that this was the least offensive way to do. I would hope that they did all these things. Maybe it was just one person in the booth who went, I'm cutting out early. Just leave it on the right.
It's funny because when I do my reviews week after week, I'm always saying, like, this is for us. This is for the home theater nerd, because most people, 95, if not higher, % of the population will never take this stuff in.
Well, that's the other thing too. I mean, when you think about the fact that it's coming from the right side in a sound bar, the right side is the center, and it is also the left. So this is when most people are hearing this. It is a mono experience for them. They may be mixing it in this way, so it seems to come a little bit more from one side to the other. But for most people whose speakers are placed improperly, far too close together and far too far away from them, it ends up becoming a mono experience.
Or just their television speakers.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
But but that's how most people take in their content, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's always been the case.
Yeah. But that's why, like, when I review these movies, I love to talk about I love to give credit, and I don't credit the sound mixes. That'd be way too much research of finding out who all these people are. But I love to pull that out and be like, they did this for us. And I think it's great. Ron Howard actually says it in one of the extras on Apollo 13. And that he knows that a lot of the stuff they're doing, it's for the home theater fan. And when he said that, I was like, almost got a tear in my eye. I'm like, he's talking to me.
I mean, I would hope so. I mean, you can just mix it for TV speakers or headphones or whatever. But especially now, I think I won't call it post pandemic yet, but as we're coming out of the pandemic, a lot more people are more cognizant or aware of, at least, that sound's important. When you're just occasionally watching a show before you go to bed at night with your family, sounds not that important. When you're locked in your house for 18 months, suddenly sound gets a little bit more important. Like, I'm tired of not being able to hear things. I don't want to have the subtitles on all the time just because I can't understand what people are saying. I don't understand why I'm getting headaches after a 1.5 or 2 hour session. Well, there's a Reddit for that, and where you can get the wrong answers and hopefully go to AV Rant and get the right ones.
There you go. That was a casual plug.
Casual. AVRant.com.
All right. AVRant.com.
Question AVRant.
Yep. Get all your questions answered.
That's right.
Rob had me end the show when I was on one, and he's like, he goes, "Do you know the ending?" And I knew the ending, and I put him on the spot when he was on my show, and I was like, "What's the last thing I say?" And he's like, "Oh."
You know, I don't know.
I know you. I would never put you on this. No, I know that. I don't even do that anymore. I just record the interviews.
This guy hasn't made a movie in a long time. The last movie he made was Gods of Egypt, and before that, it was Knowing. He also made
Knowing's with what's his name, right?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage.
That movie sucked, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was not bad, but it was not up to
They're
level.
like all Nicolas Cage movies.
Dark City is phenomenal. Dark City, that was one of the. I remember downloading the trailer from my 366 or 366 modem. You have to I download the trailer. I would start it, and I would go to bed, and I wake up in the morning, and I'd be able to watch the trailer.
Oh yeah,
it would take hours to download. I watched the trailer 1,000 times. I'm like, this movie's going to be the best thing I've ever seen, and it was not the best thing I've ever seen, but I did love it a lot. I did love that movie. I also have that one on Blu-ray or whatever. I've got that one.
Here's one for you. I got to imagine you liked this show, but it's funny. I'll tell you what triggered this, but the show House.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
I watched some episodes. Yeah. No, I didn't watch a lot, but yeah, I watched some episodes.
You remind me a lot of him.
Is it the drugs or the limp?
No, I didn't know you did either. No,
I don't have either of those two things.
No, I know. No, it's just the straightforward personality. Like, you're lying. That's what he was like. You know, the character was just like everybody's lying. Everybody, and he was just straightforward and don't give me the BS. Just give me the truth. And it's like that's you and Rob's dichotomy. Really, it's like Rob's like,
he's Canadian. He's genetically. Incapable of being contradictory. It's just, I mean, he is in real life, but like on the podcast, Tom said something a little controversial. I better fix it, which is great. I mean, like you said, that's the personas that we adopt. And I mean, I would love to say that I'm putting on a persona whenever I do podcasts, your podcast or his podcast, and maybe I'm hamming it up a little bit here and there, but for the most part, this is kind of the way I am all the time.
Yeah. Well,
so
here's the
thing.
Really
pretend.
I'm gonna, and Rob has said this too, but I'm gonna let the listeners in on a little secret. You're actually a really nice guy.
Well, and no one's going to believe that.
Exactly. See, and you love to play that down. You love to play that down like, rah. I mean, when I first approached you, you were like, here, call me. I was like, what? And you were
I'm just like, I know that I've been doing the podcast for a long time, but believe me, I am not in any way internet or otherwise famous. I'm just
no. I know that, but I mean, I'm a random person in the planet, and you were just like, oh, you like, here, call me, I'll help you out, but that's what I mean. But it's like, but I get it. You play it down on the podcast. You're like, I'm that's a lie, and you play that down, which is fine. It's great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you approve.
I just want the listeners to know how nice you are.
Oh, well.
Because you hate that.
Yeah, that's it. We could talk. I mean, I could talk about something I hate. I hate lots of stuff. I mean, but
we know.
No, I do. I thank you. I'll just say thank you. That's
You're welcome.
That's
great. What are some of your favorite scenes for this movie? Speaking of things you like. Now, you've seen this movie so many times. What are some of your favorite, that really brought you to this movie?
Oh, man, there's so many. I mean, basically any of the opening of this movie with Brandon, emerging from the ground and, clawing his way up and then having the little girl, whatever her name is, it's escaping me right now. It's not Sarah. It is Sarah?
I think it is Sarah,
yeah. Sarah, yeah. Sarah.
Yeah.
And having Sarah find him there, that's a big one. I mean, the whole fun boy death scene is pretty, iconic. You know, to me at least. I mean, I really like all of that. I think you actually see a lot more of what the original movie was gonna look like. Uh, if it, like, and for a lot of reasons, I like this particular scene when you see him strap T-Bird to the car,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, more, that's like the most violent, sort of violent. I mean, the rest of it, it's almost like he's defending himself. You can kind of make the argument that he's defending himself, even though he starts the fights anyways. But he defends himself. I guess that's what stand
Well,
your
yeah,
ground's
it's
all
all
about these
it's
days.
all revenge is
Right.
most of
I
it.
mean,
But
he's
but
coming
the
there to kill him.
pleasure he took in
Yeah.
Fun Boy, strapping him to the car and torturing him to his death.
Right. Yeah. Watching T-Bird go off the edge and blow up and everything. I mean, that was,
Yeah, T-Bird, yeah.
that I think is indicative of the actual movie. And I thought, I mean, like I said, I like the whole thing. So it's you asking me to pick I'm going to say all the scenes. There's scenes I don't like that much. That'd be easier to differentiate. But when he goes and finds Shelley's grave, and you can see he's going to go back to rest, basically, and then gets called back because of Sarah getting kidnapped by, they never even used his name in the stupid movie, but it's Top Dollar. The big guy.
Yeah.
And, that scene where he's getting dragged back out, to defend once again, or to revenge once again, is also, I think, pretty, for me, speaks. But I mean, just the whole revenge, everything. Like, I loved all those revenge movies. Just
Right.
the whole thing. The idea, and I know it's full of toxic masculinity, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. But there's a part of me that loves to think that if anything ever happened to my family or my kids or something like that, that I would go on, some sort of revenge murder spree or whatever. I know I wouldn't. I don't have the capabilities or desire, guns to do so. But we all, as fathers, and sometimes men, or sometimes just people, believe that we are capable of protecting those that we love, and when we're not, we're capable of avenging them. Let's get into more while we're at it. And having that sort of played out in front of you, you get a cathartic release from it. It gives you that sort of feeling. The same reason why some people love to watch movies like Steel Magnolias. They get that cathartic release from it. I get the release of me leaving the room, because I'm not going to sit there, even though that's a great movie. I have watched the whole thing, and it's a great movie. I'm just not going to sit there because I don't feel the same way. That's not hitting me where I live. Whereas the revenge movies absolutely do. So the whole thing for me, and anything where he's bringing people back or whatever. I guess if here I go again. When he takes a cigarette and he takes a puff off of it and he gives it back to the officer.
These things will kill you.
These things will kill you. And then he takes a puff off. I'm like, the dude poisoned it. The dude, so the crow takes a puff, gives it back to him. The guy takes a puff off and goes, "Ugh, I'm never smoking these again." And you're like, he just cured him of his nicotine addiction.
Well, it's very similar to what he did to Sarah's mother with pulling the morphine out of her veins. And I wish they had showed a little bit more power like that. It was very, it almost felt too grounded. Like you didn't get enough of the power. Like they gave you the vision through the crow's eye a little bit. But I wish they had showed, and like I said, with Tintin following him with the knife there.
Yeah.
I wish they had done a little bit more of that. Obviously, they did you shoot him and he heals, but I wish they had done a little bit more with his powers.
I like when he gets shot and he says, "Ow."
Yeah.
It just keeps going. You're like, okay. Say, I guess I disagree with you there. I don't feel like any of that was necessary. Like, I don't need to know. And I feel like that's part of, like, if you remastered it or you remade it, you would you would show him being faster than humans and stronger than humans and throwing people up in the air and stuff like that. Like, I didn't need to know any of that. In fact, I don't even care if he's faster than regular humans. All I care is that he can't die anymore. Like, he's just a revenge zombie, right? And he's not that much stronger than anybody. He's not that. He just can't be killed. He can't be.
Right.
He can't be killed. And to me, that's all that's important. And his ability to get this job done is the most important part to me, and how he gets it done. Is also, is cathartic to watch, but it's not necessarily that important that they show me that he can fly or that he can, drop kick somebody to outer space or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't want him to fly, but
yeah.
No, but you're right. In a way, it's like if he had more powers, it would take away from the sheer will that he's doing this for, the revenge, the passion that he has. It's like, you did this to it. It wasn't even so much about him. It was about what they did to his girlfriend / wife to be.
Right. And I guess that's probably the story for me is...
that's what it was for me.
Yeah, it is more about, like he didn't care that he got killed. It's like, I had that coming. I should have been able to stop you. And the fact that I didn't, well, then, fine. You killed me.
Right.
Score one for you. But I should have been able to protect her, and I wasn't able to do it, and therefore I've got to do it now. Which is, I felt like that was very clear throughout the movie. And I think the original script called for a lot more explanation of all of these things. And they were like, no, we're not really going to do that. We just did a voiceover with Sarah at the very beginning, kind of a little bit describing what was going on, and they're just like, well, they'll figure it out. He gets shot in the head and he heals. It's fine. So I had not read the comic before I watched the movie.
Me neither.
I didn't buy the comic until years later. But if I had read the comic beforehand, I probably would not have enjoyed the movie as much, because it doesn't really follow the comic at all. But it is, it's a standalone movie. It's very, very good. And I think it's a perfect example of where you have two different mediums can tell two different stories with the same characters, and both of them can be effective in their own respective ways. Would I have liked to have seen the Crow movie be that was made directly from the comics? And I think my answer is no. I don't think,
because we already have the comic.
We do, but it's also, I didn't think the comic was as good. I think the comic, and only because the character was more, I want to say grounded, but not really grounded, just more real. He had more psychological issues that were going on. Like, I don't need that for a movie. I don't need to know that John Wick is tortured about, his previous drug use or what he did before for the mafia or whatever. All I need to know is that they killed his dog and now he's going to kill him. And that's all I really need to know about John Wick, right? And that's all we really knew about John Wick, other than what other people would say about him. But that was enough. And that's enough for The Crow as well.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. And like you said, the simplicity of it all is what makes it, really.
Well, it ruins it if it's not, though, right? It ruins it if it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are characters that you want to be very complex, but there's characters that don't work as much if they are. They need a certain amount of complexity. And you don't need to know, and it's funny because they make fun of this in like stuff like Austin Powers, right? You'll hear people like the henchmen talking about their home lives and what they're going to do after work right before they get run over by a steamroller or whatever. And it's funny because we know they're going to die or they're unimportant, and yet we're still hearing their stories. That's because we don't need to know that. All we need to know is they're part of the bad guy's crew. That's all we need to know as a viewer. And for this kind of character, in order for you to put yourself in their place, meaning you to feel that catharsis that you're going to feel by them doing what they're about to do, they can't be complex. They can't have
Right.
this rich backstory because then you can't feel what you are trying to feel through that. In a
Right.
comic book, the character needs to be more complex because you have to you're not living through the character as you do in a
Right.
movie. I think you're reading about a character and getting to know them, and that makes them more interesting to you. It's a completely different medium, and it requires a completely different style of character and writing. And I feel like them paring Brandon's character down, them taking the Crow's character down, to just I am here for revenge, and y'all are gonna get it. That's all we really needed. And anything more than that just would have distracted from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because that you even say that is like watching this last week. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I love this movie, but I found myself going, why did I love this so much? But then you think about it, and it's that draw. I had just been married the year before.
Right.
I was 24, 23 years old when this movie came out. And I'm thinking, and like you said, it's like the draw was immediately like,
Well,
you
it was
want
where we were
this
in
is
our
what I
lives.
would
So
do.
we're basically the same age, right? You and I.
Yeah.
And about back then, 94, I was what? We were, 22, 23, somewhere in
Yeah.
that range, right?
Depending
24?
on when this came, I'm July, so I was turning
Yeah.
24 that year. You were turning 23. It's
So, this is this is one of those movies, and you can say Jaws is the same way because I watched Jaws with my kid, and he was like, "This is dumb." Like you understand, you understand. All these movies you like are all based on this movie. Like all
Right.
the movies you like are based on this movie. And not that The Crow was that influential, but this is a movie that hit me exactly where I lived at that age.
Yeah.
Like, and therefore, when I watch it again, I have those same nostalgic feelings. But I show it to my kids, and they're like, "I've seen this movie before, Dad." I'm like, "I know you have. Shut up and watch it again." So
Yeah.
because it's yes, it's been done. You could look at John Wick and say it's the exact same movie because John Wick definitely has superpowers. That dude cannot be killed, and don't tell me it's because of his bulletproof freaking jacket because that don't work that way. But yeah, they this is not a movie that I don't necessarily say ages well, but it doesn't translate from generation to generation. Like
No.
I can watch Big Trouble in Little China today with my kids, and they enjoy it just as much as I enjoyed it back then because it's characters, it's a different experience. You're not
Right.
getting that cathartic thing that
I
The
wanna
Crow gave you.
I hate to say it, it's like Big Trouble in Little China. I haven't seen that in forever. But that's like, and this is going to be the wrong way to put it, but that's like a more entertaining movie.
Yeah, no,
Whereas
that's exactly right. Yeah, Well,
The
you can look
Crow, it's entertainment, but it's more passionate. It's more something like you have to be drawn into it, like you said.
you got to
and-
connect with it.
Yeah, and we did, and that's and especially for what we do, like just even being a home theater. I think home theater fans are generally passionate people. To do this as a hobby, it takes quite a bit of passion because there's many reasons to quit. So I would say, like, and if we're drawn into it, and years later, and like I said, I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm going, huh. But that's why I think if it got remastered, could it draw us in even more and again? And that's, I'm like, I would hope so.
I would think so. It would for me. I don't know that necessarily would for anybody, any other generation. They get distracted by the low special effects and stuff, and we're like, oh,
Right.
back then it was good. Just like the
You're
shark,
right.
they're like, oh, the shark looks totally fake. I'm like, shut up. You want to see sharks that look fake? Watch Deep Blue Sea or whatever that one was Samuel L. Jackson. Those sharks look fake. So that was a much more recent movie. So yeah. And I think you're right. So you look at something like Star Wars, you look at Indiana Jones, you look at Big Trouble in Little China. Those are entertaining movies. You're watching characters, you're getting to know the characters, you care about the characters, but you're not necessarily emotionally invested in feeling what they're feeling. You're not trying to feel what they're feeling. Like you're not sitting there. You may be rooting for Leia or rooting for Han or whatever. You could be on team one of these people, but it's not like everybody has to be on team Eric Draven. You have to be on team Eric Draven in order for this movie to. You can't go, "Ooh, Tintin's my favorite character," because you are going to be disappointed. That is not going to be a good movie for you. You are not going to last through this movie because you're going to be like, "Oh crap, dude, he just died." And you're like, "Yep." And it's going to get worse. So you have to be on team Eric Draven in order to get through this movie and find it entertaining. Whereas with the rest of them, it's a story. It's like being read a story, which is a completely different thing. They could have made The Crow into a movie like that. And then Draven would have had to have much more nuance and complexity and everything else. But then I wouldn't have connected with it, and neither I don't think would have you. Not nearly on the same level.
No.
Or in the same way.
No, not at all. Yeah, I have a whole...
The Crow would have been the villain at that point. I mean, when somebody goes around killing everybody, it's really hard to be the good guy if you don't connect with them.
Yeah, I have a whole other tangent that I won't go down, but it's about passion and stuff like that. But I'll leave that alone because we've been going a while already. And I know you're pretty tired.
Yeah, I was tired when I started this. So
yeah, and we tried to do this last week. Thank you for being so accommodaing. I wasn't feeling well last week. It's like you were like, "Oh, about 10 o'clock," and I was like, "Oh no." But
last week I ended up not. So Thursday nights, which is when we're recording this, my kids have climbing, and last week they ended up staying home because they had homework or something, and I was like, well, this will be good. I can start a little bit earlier, and then you bowed out, so that's why.
Yeah. Well, you said later on, and I'm like, because I was thinking we had ballparked it earlier in the night, and I didn't know that, and I was like, okay, I'm like, I can make that, and then I was like, I was just hanging on to get to like 7, and then you're like, probably around 10. I was like, oh no. I was like, all right, but if I had to do it, I would have done it. But you were like, no, next week's great. Okay, great, awesome.
I'm easy.
Yes, you are. I've already established that. Tom's the nice guy.
I didn't say nice. I said easy.
Yeah. All right.
I actually didn't watch the movie again. I was supposed to watch the movie, and I was like, I'm going to watch Fear Street instead. So I watched the first 2 Fear Streets.
Oh, geez.
This is from memory. The last time I watched this movie was probably 3 years ago. Everything I've talked about is from memory.
Great show. It's just like your AV Rant show prep.
Oh, yeah.
Give me a title, and we'll hit on it.
Phoning that in.
That's all we ask. Like I said, we've got to do one. I think the next one we have to do is a movie we disagree on. So you and I got to get together. Movie I like.
Send me a copy of the new stupid Snyder Cut. And
have you seen it yet?
No.
You still haven't seen the Snyder Cut yet.
Why would I see it? How could I see it? I'm supposed to go there. I'm not getting HBO Max just for that nonsense. I'm sitting here trying to figure out if I'm going to get Apple TV for the Foundation series. Oh my god,
I'm loving it.
So bad. Is it out? Is it started already?
Foundation? Oh yeah. There's a podcast to go around along with it, which I know you'll love. It's I like it. But did you read the books?
Oh yeah, I've read the books.
Oh, then you won't like it.
So, that's disappointing.
The word around is anybody that's read the books isn't happy. Because it's basically the series is based on the books, and they take some liberties and change some things.
Well, it depends on. Okay, so Isaac Asimov, if you haven't read the Foundation series, Isaac Asimov wrote them somewhat out of order. So the first Foundation, if you read them chronologically and as he wrote them, you'll read like it goes from like it would be like book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1 is the very last book he wrote. And the 1 book is like he's like 30 years older or 40 years older and has hundreds of books under his belt at that point. So the first book he chronologically wrote were like pulp stories were published in magazines and stuff, which he then stitched all together to make into this Foundation series. which was, it was an ongoing series in this whatever magazines, if I remember correctly. I haven't really looked this up in a while. But then he goes back and writes the prequel book, which is written so much better than the. So then you have to go through, and as he's writing these books, they get better and better written until the very end, and then you have to go back. I absolutely adore the Foundation series and the Dune series as well, which is why I'm excited about the Dune movie coming out.
I'm excited I haven't read either of them, but I'm excited for Dune, but I'm afraid that it's not going to be as good as Foundation because it's a movie. Foundation is a series. It's going to be eight seasons. That's what that Apple is planning on, 8 seasons for Foundation.
We'll see.
Get this out.
Yeah. So the first Dune book is, they're like, oh, you could never make Dune into a movie. God Emperor Dune, that's like the world's most boring movie. Everything happens in one room. It's just all in one room. It's not even all that exciting. It's just people talking to each other. Yeah. So yes, I would say that there are some Dune books that cannot be made into movies or shouldn't be made into movies. The first Dune book was had tons of action and definitely can be made into, I think, a reasonably length movies. The problem is that they tried to make these movies too long or too short. There's like no in between anymore. Either they try to get everything in there. It's like a 2.5 hour. I don't want to go to a 2.5 hour movie anymore. I don't even like watching 2.5 hour movies at home, much less the 3 hour ones that they'll do for Hobbit and these other things. I'm like, I've never seen The Hobbit. I'm not gonna. There's no other, and I haven't seen the last season of Game of Thrones either because I don't want to. I already hate the rest of the Game of Thrones because I know how bad the last season is. It's like. I don't even want to watch it to see how bad it is. But Dune certainly can be made into a movie. I'm just afraid it's going to be overly long, and I like to press pause. I actually had somebody just text me today and ask me if I wanted to go to the movies to see it with them, and I'm like, oh, I do, but I don't for so many reasons, and not the least of which is the pandemic. But the rest of them are also reasons I don't go to the movie theaters either, in that I can't press pause, I can't drink a beer, and I can't take a bathroom break whenever I want. So I don't think so, but we'll see. I might change my mind.
Or you could just get HBO Max.
Yeah, I'm not
for a month.
I'm not doing that either.
Yeah. David Goyer, who's doing Foundation, let me just tell you this quick. In the opening podcast, the reason he did it is he had a hard relationship with his father. And his father asked him to read the book when he was a kid, and he didn't. Because he had a really bad relationship with his dad. When his dad was passing away, he went to see his dad, who he hadn't seen, I believe he hadn't seen him in years. And his dad asked him, did you read, one of the last things he asked him was, did you read Foundation? Because he wanted his son to read it. And he's like, yeah, I did. And he loved it. And he's like, there was a conversation there, and just hearing that in the podcast, hearing David Goyer say that and listening to how much this means to him and what it meant to him and his father, who he didn't get along with, but this was the one thing that they agreed on. I was just like, that to me blew me away. I'd already liked the show. I'd already seen 3 episodes, and I started the podcast, and I was like, holy crap. And then just talking about, like we've talked about all night, the passion and how you can get involved. Once I heard that, I was like, this is insane. I'm like, I think you'd like it. You're pretty good at separating, books from movies too.
Yeah. But I'm okay with that. It's harder when you've read the book first and you go in with expectations.
It definitely is. Yeah.
But I haven't read them in quite a few years, though it does make me want to read them again, to be honest with you. I try to get my eldest kid to read the Lensman series, which is E. Doc Smith wrote these back so far ago that they still thought there was ether in space. They start off as pulp romance novels, but they quickly escalate. It is the series that all anime is based on. So everything from it, yeah. In fact, there is an anime called Lensman that is more directly based on it, but it has all the foundations of what modern anime looks like. There's power creep. Things just, everybody keeps getting better and better weapons, so they keep outdoing each other. By the end of it, they're like throwing planets at each other. It's nuts. It's an insane. It's
Wow.
like a space. It's a spacefaring kind of thing, and there's aliens, and uh, the basic premise is that there is a planet of, or I think there's a planet of all-knowing aliens that reach out to some people on Earth and draw them there, and they go there and they get these lenses, which are like bracelets or whatever,
Yeah.
that essentially can only be worn by people with pure intentions and pure hearts, and whatever. And then they go on to like rule, like become like a galactic council, and kind of help protect the good people, I'm sure, whatever, from the bad aliens or whatever. And then those lenses that end up giving them powers, and then they pass them down to their kids, and their kids get even more powers, and Voltron up at one point. I think they all combine into one big.
Yeah.
It goes nuts. So I've been trying to get my kid to read that, and I don't think he can get. Oops, I hit my microphone. Sorry. I don't think he can get past the romance stuff, because it's pretty pulpy at the very beginning. Again, it starts off as magazine art. The science fiction pulp magazines that used to be published back in the 40s and 50s, 30s, whatever it was. So but you should, if you haven't read those, they're very short though. There's like 6 books, and I don't think any of them are over 100 pages.
Oh wow, that's right up my alley.
Yeah, you can burn through those things, and they're great. They're so silly. But when they start throwing planets at each other, that's when you know. He was writing himself into a corner, and it was quickly coming. I'm like, dude, what are you gonna do next? You can't keep throwing planets at people.
Where do you go from here?
Where go from there?
Yeah. That's crazy.
All right. Yes, I need to get going.
All righty, that'll do it. Tom from AV Rant.
That's right.
Get your questions answered. Anything and everything, and they'll even, if you ask them, they'll tell you their favorite movie too. That's how I find out all my great information on these guys.
That's right. That's how he gets advertising. Where should I place? Should I move my subwoofer over 1 inch?
No. I've written recently, and I just call myself DJ. I don't need advertising. I appreciate it.
Your audience is bigger than ours now, huh?
No.
You're trying to say?
No, I legitimately had a question, and I know how that irks you, Mr. Nice Guy.
It doesn't irk me. I don't care.
I'm just kidding.
I just like to say it.
It's
more fun to be irked than it is to actually. Well, it's more fun to act,
to pretend
to be irked. Yes,
irked. Right. Yep. All right, Tom. Thank you very much, as always. Next time, we're gonna have to argue about something.
Yeah,
people want a throwdown between me and you.
I'm sure we can find one.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can find one. It's not that hard. I don't like a lot of things. There's a lot of things I don't.
And I like a lot of things. Just throw a dart at the wall, and there we go.
You just send me a list of things you like, and I'll send you a list back of all the reasons you're wrong.
I'll tell you after. I got one coming up. I'll tell you after. I don't want to let the listeners in now. But
okay.
All right. Thank you, Tom. We'll talk again soon. Well, was I right or was I right? Maybe I wasn't right. I don't know. I had a great time with Tom. I hope you guys had a great time listening to that. We're really we've already got a movie picked out. We're really looking forward to sitting down and really going at it, having some fun there, having an argument, all in good fun. But thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. I love doing these. November is chock full of interviews. Just letting you know ahead of time. I'm having a blast with this. So, we'll see how it goes. But, hey, thanks for listening. Follow me on Twitter at @brightside_chat. That's not underscore chat. At @brightside_HT. Duh. I think I might have screwed that up in the open, too. Oh, well. You guys will correct me. See how much fun I'm having? I'm so excited talking to everybody. At @brightside_HT. And also, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/BrightsideHomesTheater. And, check out the website, check out here. Anyways, thank you for listening. Have a great week, everybody. I'll be back on Tuesday with more. I'll talk to you then. Give me your comments. Let me know what you thought of Tom and I. Like I said, I had a great time. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. Now, have a great weekend and go push play. Hey, Fred. This has been a Hey Fred production with theme music by Jeff Bernhardt and Throne Vault Productions.